Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lauren Izo. And coming up in this edition, never again. Jews around the world commemorate International Holocaust Remembrance Day digitally. The streets are burning. Ultra-orthodox protesters are getting more violent as they clash with police over lockdown restrictions. And if you build it, they will come. Little League baseballers from Israel and Dubai team up on the pitch. 76 years ago on this day, on January 27, 1945, Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp was liberated. Today, around the world, people are marking World Holocaust Remembrance Day. Because of the pandemic, commemorations are largely being observed online, a new era in the Jewish people's mission to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive. Events are being held digitally by the UN, Israel's Foreign Ministry, the European Union, and many other organizations. That includes Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum in Israel, who are hosting an online virtual guided tour of the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum in Poland. Take a look.
Auschwitz-Birkenau, where over 1 million Jewish men, women, and children, and approximately 125,000 non-Jews were murdered by the German Nazis, has entered human consciousness as the representation of supreme human evil, as well as the ultimate symbol of the Holocaust of the Jewish people.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu shared his remarks to commemorate this day as well, stressing that anti-Semitism is still alive and well, even in the 21st century.
In the 21st century, the disease of anti-Semitism continues to contaminate and spread. It can be found alive, kicking, and pernicious on North American university campuses, in South Asian madrasas, among European elites. A vaccine to safeguard against the anti-Semitism virus has yet to be found. It is said that some things never change. Never again isn't a slogan. This is our policy, and this is our mission, and we will always carry it out.
Okay, let's see how the pandemic is shaping the way we remember the Holocaust. We're now joined by Simi Allen, head of the International Media Division at Yad Vashem's Communication Department. Thank you so much, Simi, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off by talking about some of the activities you've organized together with the museum in honor of International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
So Yad Vashem has been very active in creating unique content to commemorate the Holocaust on this International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It is an opportunity for us to reach out to the public all over the world and to bring them the content, the relevance, and the importance of Holocaust commemoration and memory. And Yad Vashem has uploaded a really phenomenal online exhibition to educate and to inform the public not only about a topic that is relatively unknown, but also a topic that is very, very important and really has the ability to impress and inspire us today. The online exhibition entitled My Lost Childhood is a story of what it was like for children who survived the Holocaust, many of them orphaned at a very, very young age, with no one left in the world, and they had to survive. They had to not only survive the Holocaust, but now they had to survive their liberation. And they needed a lot of attention and a lot of care. And so after the Holocaust, the international community, especially the American Jewish community, I have to say, really spurred this movement to establish homes, children's homes throughout Europe, across Europe, in Poland, in Germany, in Holland, in France, and all over these children would go to rehabilitate, to get the needed care and the very, very much needed attention in order to re-enter society. They really, truly were re-entering society through these children's homes. And that is what we have uploaded, the stories of 7 children's homes throughout Europe. And the stories are truly an inspiration to us all today, especially today.
Wow. So this year, we're obviously marking this day a bit different than we have in previous years. Everything is digital. Everything's online, of course, because of the pandemic. So I'm wondering, how do you think the pandemic is changing the way we might remember the Holocaust from now on?
Well, I think that the world will be different after Corona. I think that we have seen and we will continue to see the changes. But Yad Vashem has always, for the last 2 decades, has been online, bringing content, relevant and timely content to the global audience. Our audience has grown year after year after year. We have not only seen throughout this pandemic an increase of, a steady increase of interest and desire to learn more about the Holocaust, but we have seen the engagement with Yad Vashem, the engagement on all of our platforms, whether it be social media or in our website in 8 different languages. We have seen a tremendous amount of interest. And so I think that even when we go back to physical contact, in-person commemoration, we will continue to also be online. And Yad Vashem is very much committed to that.
Simi Allen, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me.
As Israel marks Holocaust Remembrance Day, the generation who actually experienced it, the witnesses and survivors, are becoming fewer and fewer. Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics is reporting that since the beginning of the pandemic, Israel lost hundreds of Holocaust survivors to COVID-19. With the country under lockdown amid a massive vaccine campaign underway, things may start to look up soon. More on Israel's fight against COVID in the next report.
On Tuesday, Israel's health ministry reporting 7,752 cases, with a positive infection rate of 9.6%. There are 1,207 patients in serious condition, with 324 on ventilators, and the death toll is 4,539. According to officials, that number includes 900 survivors of the Holocaust. Of the 3,500 who contracted the disease, 17% of the cases were fatal, just slightly higher than the 16% death rate in the general population. Local media reports say officials are baffled by the high mortality rate, even as Israel pushes its vaccine agenda and maintains a strict lockdown. As of today, 2.7 million Israelis have received a first dose of the COVID vaccine, and almost 1.4 million have had both. While adults over the age of 40 are getting vaccinated at an almost miraculous rate, according to health ministry statistics, Israel is seeing a sharp rise in the number of children and teens getting infected with coronavirus. More than 50,000 children and teens have been diagnosed with coronavirus since the start of the month. Now there are doubts as to whether schools will reopen anytime soon. Clashes continue to break out in ultra-orthodox neighborhoods daily, as they protest against the restrictions and attempt to keep schools open illegally. One bus driver working near the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood of Mea Sharim documented the damage done to his Egged bus during a protest. Meanwhile, similar clashes continue throughout the country in several neighborhoods. One young protester vowing to fight, quote, until the end.
They like fighting with the Orthodox Jews. That's all they have to do. And they beat up all the people, and they spray water. And this goes on. It's going on for the last 2 weeks. It's going on every day. And it's unbelievable. And we're going to fight here till the end.
But the ultra-Orthodox are not the only rule breakers. Meanwhile, an assisted living home for the elderly held an indoor concert for 200 residents. Organizers say all residents had been vaccinated, but still, the government has not yet approved events of this size. Unless Israelis begin adhering to the lockdown rules, officials say there is no end in sight. Chana Rifkin, ILTV.
All right, continuing with COVID news, with Israel's airport now closed, many Israelis who left the country and wanted to come back in order to get vaccinated are now unable to come here. But even after the airport will be reopened, will Israeli expats be able to come back to get vaccinated? Is it even legal? Well, joining us now to explain is Joshua Pex from CDBP law firm. Joshua, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, are expats really coming back to Israel to get vaccinated? And like I asked in my lead, is it legal?
So first of all, yes, it is legal. Anyone that holds an Israeli passport can actually come to Israel, land at the airport or through any border crossing and enter Israel. The question is, will they be able to get the vaccination? Because they will need to actually have a waiting period.
Okay, so just to distinguish, there obviously are Israeli residents and there are Israeli citizens. Residents might be the ones who actually maintain their health insurance payments, but the citizens are the ones that haven't lived here in a long time, are residents of different countries. Is there a difference between the two statuses in terms of who can get vaccinated?
Yes, any Israeli that is living outside of Israel for more than 2 years, then is probably not a resident anymore. He hasn't paid the Israeli national insurance, and therefore he's not a member of any what is called Kupat Cholim, a healthcare organization.
Right.
Maybe they're living in countries that a very small percentage of the population has been vaccinated, and they think to themselves, in Israel, more than 2 million people have already got the vaccine. Maybe I can go back to Israel, a short vacation in the homeland, meeting family and friends, and also get the vaccination at the same time.
And the answer to that is, can they do that?
The answer is that the Israeli Ministry of Health has actually said, no, they don't encourage this. I mean, if a person hasn't actually paid their insurance, why would they be able to come and just get the vaccination? However, in practice, we know, and also the Ministry of Health has admitted that this has happened. So this is maybe something that is sort of typical of Israel.
Right.
And we know that the state of Israel does like to help Israelis wherever they are if they're in trouble. So I think this is also something we see in that direction.
Well, technically, any Israeli citizen can legally come back into the country whenever they want. They just, like you said, they don't have health insurance. Will they be able to, pay for a vaccine through some private company, a private health insurance? Is that possible right now in Israel?
So first of all, I don't know of any way to pay for it privately, but people coming back, usually they have to wait for a period of up to 6 months. But if they do want to shorten the period of waiting, they can pay up to 12,000 shekels, which is about $3,700, and then reduce or eradicate this waiting period. So this is an option. I mean, maybe it's not recommended, but it is possible.
So they can come to Israel, pay 12,000 shekels, and basically have the vaccine the next day.
Yeah, I mean, they'll need to go through quarantine and need to register with the Kupat Cholim, with the clinic, but in theory, it seems like it would be possible for those who are already Israeli citizens.
And from what you've seen, people are already doing this?
We're seeing a little bit of it, but just because all the logistics, it's very difficult to travel these days. So we haven't seen a huge number, but I think we will be seeing it more and more in the next couple of months.
And from which countries are most of these people coming from, or where do you expect to see them coming from when the numbers start to grow?
I would say mostly from North America, United States, Canada, but maybe also Western Europe, places like France or Germany, where we hear that only 1% of the population has been vaccinated. There might be Israelis there that do want to get the vaccine.
Do you foresee that Israel will start sort of providing the private vaccines to create some sort of medical tourism around the vaccine in Israel? I mean, that's definitely could be an option since Israel is getting through this vaccine campaign so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little bit outlandish, but Israel is the startup nation, and we see that Israel has managed to distribute the vaccine faster than many other, maybe any other place, so it could be.
All right, a very interesting development. Joshua Pex, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
On Tuesday, a knife attack was thwarted at an IDF checkpoint near the West Bank city of Ariel. According to eyewitness accounts, the attacker targeted a female soldier who ducked from the knife and hit the assailant with her weapon as another soldier nearby neutralized the threat, shooting the suspect. As it turns out, the young soldier who was first targeted is a lone soldier from the UK. Listen to her speak about the incident.
Today, during my guarding duty with my commander, a terrorist attacked us. He first approached me with a knife in hand and jumped on top of me. I pushed him and gave him a few hits with my gun. Then he went to and from me and my commander, attempting to stab us. My commander shot one bullet through him and managed to neutralize the terrorist. And for that, we've been training all of my service, and for that, we were ready.
Israel is preparing for a potential military operation against Iran in light of the new administration in Washington's planning to return to the 2015 nuclear deal that Donald Trump pulled out of. IDF Chief of Staff Aviv Kochavi, speaking at a Tel Aviv security conference, says he has instructed the military to prepare a number of operational plans.
ראינו לאחרונה עם חילופי הממשל בארצות הברית, האיראנים הודיעו כבר שהם רוצים לחזור להסכם הקודם. אני מבקש לומר את עמדתי. עמדה שאני אומר אותה לכל המקבילים שלי כשאני פוגש אותם בכל העולם. חזרה להסכם הגרעין מ-2015, או אפילו אם יהיה זה הסכם דומה עם מספר שיפורים, היא דבר רע ולא נכון. הוא רע מבחינה אופרטיבית והוא רע מבחינה אסטרטגית.
Israel's mission to Morocco reopened this week after 20 years of being shut. Former ambassador to Egypt, David Govrin, arrived in Rabat to take up the ambassador post following the signing of the normalization between the two countries, part of the U.S.-brokered Abraham Accords. The Israeli consulate in Dubai also opened 2 days after the Israeli embassy in the United Arab Emirates opened in Abu Dhabi, its capital. Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi saying this is living proof of the changes in the region and the warm peace between us and countries in the region. This is an important day for peace and an exciting day in the framework of implementing agreements with the UAE and Morocco. Well, with a new man and woman in the White House, here in the Middle East, curiosity has skyrocketed over what the policies of the new administration will be, especially when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. According to acting U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Richard Mills, Biden's White House supports a two-state solution and restoration of communication with the Palestinians.
Under the new administration, the policy of the United States will be to support a mutually agreed two-state solution in which Israel lives in peace and security alongside a viable Palestinian state. In order to advance these objectives, the Biden administration will restore credible U.S. engagement with Palestinians as well as Israelis. This will involve renewing U.S. relations with the Palestinian leadership and Palestinian people, relations which have atrophied over the last 4 years. At the same time, I must be clear, the U.S. will maintain its steadfast support for Israel under the Biden administration.
Mills adding that the new administration would continue to urge other countries to normalize ties with Israel and join the Abraham Accords. Okay, speaking of those Abraham Accords, which now includes the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco, a new collaboration is in the works for kids. Israel's national youth baseball team for ages up to 12 is partnering up with Dubai's Little League for a revolutionary event where the only common language is baseball. Take a look.
Israeli baseball is booming. Young Israeli kids in towns, cities, and even in Arab villages are falling in love with the game, carrying on America's favorite pastime to a new generation and a new continent. But now even more exciting is a partnership between a Little League team in Israel and its counterpart in Dubai.
I fell in love with baseball when I was about 6 or 7 when I went to a Yankee game. And it's a great honor to play for Israel wearing blue and white. And I can't wait to meet new kids from a different culture.
And meeting their friends in jerseys and more is set to happen in the near future.
These 12-year-old kids behind me are going to Dubai for the first time in the history of Israel. We're sending a baseball team, a national team, to Dubai to play sports there, to play baseball there, together with our Olympic team that is qualified for the first time for the Olympics in July in Tokyo. We're going to be making history.
And their ultimate dream? Inspiring unity through the love of baseball across the region. His Excellency, Saeed Mohammed Hareb, Dubai Sports Council Secretary General, stating, "I cannot think of anything better than to have children represent the bright future that we look forward to growing together." National teams of both countries are set to compete in an event appropriately called the Unity Cup in the coming fall of 2021. Little League teams from other Gulf countries are invited to participate as well. Chana Rifkin, ILTV.
What a great initiative. Okay, joining me in studio to talk about it is Danny Grossman, Team Israel consultant. Hi, Danny. Thank you for joining me.
A pleasure.
And on Zoom, we're going to be joined by Dubai's Little League president, Roger Duthie. Thank you, Roger, for joining us. We're going to get to you in just 1 second, but I want to start in the studio with Danny. Please tell me, how did this idea come to be, and why baseball, and why kids?
Well, the idea came to be because peace came to be.
Of course.
I remember sitting and watching the first broadcast about peace and said, let's do this.
You automatically thought baseball?
Absolutely. Well, as people who know me, I've been helping with Peter Kurtz, who did an amazing job in bringing Israel's national team to the Olympics with an incredible thing. So now I said,
when the Olympics eventually do happen. Sorry,
they will
stick that in there.
Let's be optimistic. But Israel was the first team sport. Israel qualified for the Olympics the first time in 45 years. Amazing achievement. And similarly to peace is an amazing thing. I've been involved in peace talks and everything throughout my life. And I said, look, you build peace from the ground up. And that's why kids, too, that's the future. And you do it through sports. Look, my good friend Tal Brody is an ambassador for goodwill. So you do it through sports. You do it through friendly relationships. You have kids get to know other kids, and that will build. I was really moved by the famous Kevin Costner movie called Field of Dreams. So here, this is Field of Peace, and we will build peace. We found a fantastic partner in Roger, who you'll see in a second and speak with, and he said, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. And so we're going to have Israeli kids, kids from Dubai, and hopefully kids from everywhere else in the region who are now our new neighbors.
Amazing. All right, Roger, next question is for you. I want to ask, what do we have to look forward to? We have an event coming up in March, I understand. And then where do we see this collaboration going after that?
Well, for us, first of all, thank you very much, Danny, Peter, and everyone from the Israeli Baseball Association. It's been a wonderful partnership so far. And I agree with everything that Danny said. We're building peace through sport, and what better way to do it with some 12-year-olds. So we're very excited about that. After March, our event, our kids normally will play in some other tournaments in the region, but this year probably not happening. But our kids will be heading over to Israel in October. So we'll be preparing for that most of the summer. So we're very excited about that, and we're very excited about the collaboration and the relationship we have now with the Israeli Baseball Association.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that those tournaments can actually happen. Danny, I want to ask you one more question. I know I mentioned earlier, I made a joke that baseball was the language that these kids are communicating in, but obviously they grew up in different environments, they speak different languages. How do these kids communicate on the pitch?
Well, it's not on the pitch. Through pitches, they will communicate.
Through pitches.
And through balls and strikes and getting to know each other. But baseball, people who know baseball know it instills love of teammates. It instills love of greater values, of laying down the bunt for your friend, but also respecting your other person. And again, you build it from the ground up. Like the JNF, the Jewish National Fund, is now building fields in Israel through a project called Project Baseball. So we're going to get kids and build this up, and they'll be talking with each other. They'll be yelling at each other, sometimes using Hebrew, English, Arabic, use yalla, slide. You'll see all sorts of things happening, but the kids will communicate and get to know each other.
And what, from what you're hearing, are the kids most excited for?
Oh, they're excited. Again, kids don't care about politics. Kids care about sports, which is exactly what Roger just said. You get them to love the game. You get them to talk to each other, get to know each other. And you'll see that we really speak a common language, which is really based on the same values, which hopefully will help us build a better world.
Danny Grossman, thank you so much for bringing this story to us. And Roger Duthie, all the way from Dubai, thank you so much. What a really inspiring collaboration. On that note, let's take a look at the weather forecast. This evening calls for partly cloudy skies and lows of about 54 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. And tomorrow, clouds still on the horizon with highs averaging at 58 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. And just before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. All right, our video that we're showing you today on Tubing is not as lighthearted as the videos we usually show you in honor of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. These are a bunch of IDF officers singing Israel's national anthem at the Majdanek concentration camp. A really, really moving video, definitely to be a part of and also to watch. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.26 shekels to the American dollar and 2.5 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Then don't forget to visit the all-new and improved ILTV website at iltv.tv and let us know what you think. Subscribe to our newsletter for the latest updates while you're there. I'm Lauren Izzo. Thank you for watching.